Well, hey everybody, it is Romania Black, and we're starting a new show today, and I'm so excited! Should I call it Delicious in Dungeon? Dungeon Meshy? It's technically Dungeon Meshy, but Delicious in Dungeon is what the platform that I'm watching this on has dubbed it, so I'm so excited. I have been recommended this show for so long. I help coach a speech team, and all half of the speech team, they're like, have you watched Dungeon Meshy? And I was like they don't know that I have this channel, so I was like, no, it's on my list to watch. I'm like, just don't tell me anything about it. And they're like, okay. So yeah, I have really wanted to dive into this show for a long time and watch it. And especially since earlier on this year, I was watching Freerun and getting into more fantasy series and trying to get into that genre. And so a lot of people were like, when are you going to watch Dungeon Meshy and Delicious in Dungeon? And I was like, well, eventually. So I'm finally getting into it. I'm so excited. I want to know what all the things are. I cannot wait. If you've never been on this channel before, welcome. I'm Romania Black. I'm just a nerd who likes anime and manga, and I'm also an English teacher and speech coach. So that's what I do in my real time. And so I like to watch shows, and I like to discuss them and talk about them and break them down and dissect them to the best of my abilities. And I feel like this series is going to be a lot of fun. So if you are new to the channel, the one thing that I ask in the comments is please no spoilers of things to come in the show. If I don't understand something that's happening, don't worry. The show will explain it. I will find out later. It'll be great. Anything that's a mystery, I want the show to give me the answers and the shows to give me those mysteries explained, not the comment section. So I'm happy to get involved in the comment section and answer your comments and talk with you about the show episode to episode. But just don't spoil me on things to come that are going to get revealed later on. I know I'll hit it, so it'll be great. Also, I'm doing something a little bit different with this series. You may notice if there's something in the thumbnail or like this episode reaction discussion's a little bit longer than usual. My brother has agreed to help me, and I'm going to try my hand at doing cooking things because it's about eating food in a dungeon. That's the only thing I know about this show. They cook food in a dungeon. That's all I know. So this will either go great or horribly. And if it goes horribly, you all get to watch it. So either way, I decided that for each episode, I would record these episodes ahead of time. And then when my brother and I were ready, I don't know if it's going to be over the course of 2 episodes per dish that we make or 4 episodes per dish that we make. Depends on how long it takes to make the dish and everything. But I'm thinking maybe like 2 episodes per dish. So I'm going to split up the episodes in the latter part of this video where you'll see my brother and I attempting to make food, probably horribly, but you'll see the first part of it this week, the next part of it next week, but we'll also be answering comments that I've been asking patrons about these first couple of episodes as we go. So if you're a patron on Patreon or have been the last couple of months, you've probably been seeing posts with me being like, hey, give me some questions you have after watching episode 1 of Dungeon Meshy or Delicious in Dungeon, and so on and so forth. So for those of you who are patrons before this show came out, your questions I'm going to answer. And maybe they'll be questions that you all have watching this video as well. So we'll see. Also, the thing about it is because it's a brand new show and I want to make sure that it stays up on the channel and all of that good stuff because we all know how things are with content. I am going to be listening to the episode. You'll be able to see a partial screen thing and a timer. And then if you want to sync this up with your own video, with your own audio, then definitely feel free to do that. That sounds totally cool, but that's just the name of the game. I think it's going to be a lot of fun either way. Just think of it as instead of being behind a paywall for timer reactions, you get the full thing right here on YouTube. It's fine. But if you want to go ahead and watch next week's episode, you can join me on Patreon for $5 and watch next week's and be ahead of everybody else. And also get access to the Discord to talk about this series as well. I'm so excited. If you know me, I like talking about character development, I like shipping, and I like anime. So those things seem like a great, and I love watching the Great British Baking Show. It's one of my favorite shows. So I'm like, anime mixed with food? How can we go wrong? So I'm so excited, y'all. We've almost wasted 5 minutes. We're not going to waste any more time. But thank you all so much for your support. I'm super excited, but I've waited to watch this show forever and to see what it's about, and it's finally here. So let's dive in. We're going to start Delicious in Dungeon, episode 1. And we're going to do that here in 3, 2, one. And let's see what all the hubbub is about. I did the Japanese subs, of course, as one would expect, but I've heard that the dub is really good too. Oh, the little mushroom, how cute! Okay. Oh, hello! Oh, okay. A dragon man. No. Oh. A mad mage. Oh, okay. Oh. Well, that's creepy. But then how can he bestow upon you the kingdom if he blew away? So they're all trying to defeat the mage so that they can inherit the kingdom, essentially. A dragon fight right now? Starting it out? Why not? Oh. Leos? Oh. Okay. Oh. What? I mean, they don't need a Snickers, clearly. Oh. Oh no. Okay. What is going on? Oh shit, I want to know these characters. Should you be worried about? Oh shit! Oh! Oh! Oh my god! Okay, so Fallon was the mage that got eaten by the dragon. Oh. But is she a mage? Oh. Oh, shit. Oh my gosh. Oh, shit. Oh. Chilchik. They just quit? Oh my god. Okay. Okay. Uh-huh. Okay. Uh. So his sister. Oh. Oh, well. Oh my god. Oh my god. Oh. Oh. They were too hungry. Uh. Oh. No. But you need to eat food first. You said that yourself. What? No, you can't go by yourself. That's a horrible plan. Well, is it totally doable? Oh, well, that's really sweet of you. Okay. Aw. Do you like Fallon? Okay. Oh, I like him. She'll check is that his name? Oh, and he's a thief. Okay. Aw. Aw. Ah! Yeah. We just said that. Oh. Oh. Right. So you're just gonna eat the monsters in the dungeon. We're the highest ones up on the food chain. Okay. Were they tasty looking? I like that that's what she thinks. Yeah, are you insane? Right. Oh my god, from both ends. Huh? Oh my god. Yeah, you could die from food poisoning. Oh! Oh wow. Walking mushrooms. No! Yeah, how do you know it's not poisonous? Gourmet guide? Oh my god. Well, alright, okay. Oh no! Scorpion! Oh, look at the little mage costume. Ah, oh, that's kind of disturbing. Oh, well. Huh. Oh. Well, I mean, as if protecting something interesting. Okay. Uh, uh. You're too into this. Look, maybe. Sure. I do love monsters. Hi, Shinjing Cho. No, I don't think he's a psychopath. He might have a kink, but yeah, everybody's gonna be watching them. Laos is, yeah. How do you cook a mushroom and a scorpion? Boil it. Oh. Well, that's a good way of. That's a good way to do. No, it doesn't. Yeah. How do you know such things? Are you sure? A scorpion hot pot. Oh. Oh. It tastes like ass! Ah! Ooh, I like that he knows all the things. Oh, like a shrimp. Oh. Throw him in the pot. A mushroom foot sniffer. Oh my god. All the kinks. You are weirdly prepared. Yeah, we gotta have something else. Look at him. Look at this guy watching. Those are corpses. Well, oh my god, ew. Oh, slime. Oh, she got slime like Nickelodeon. Are y'all gonna help her? They're right there in front of you. Oh, wow. I was gonna say a girl. Doing great. Aww. Glad you know such things. Oh my god. And it has like a nucleus in the cell. That's so gross. Well, sure. Oh. Like the good lady here. Oh, and some citrus juice. Okay. Oh my god. Wow. A slime dryer I made myself. Wow. Kind of like seaweed, I guess. Oh, look at him being prepared. Oh, because they have a common interest. For 10 years. Well, yeah, it seems like that. Interesting that we're getting a little bit of a timeline. And to how long the dungeon's been there. Oh my gosh, that looks like cabbage. We might have to make a hot pot. Oh my god, look at that! With the noodles and everything. Yeah. Oh. Oh! Marcel's like, well, I don't know about this. Girl, just eat it. That's the slime. Well, look at that. Oh. Ooh. It's just algae. Ah! Yeah, look at that. Just having a great time here in front of everybody. Senshi. And he's a dwarf. Laios. Marshall. Chilchuk, Marcel, Laios. Okay. Okay. Is this something we can eat? Uh-huh. Well, that's good to know. Yay! Oh! Yay! Yes! I have so many recipes in mind! He's just like, yeah, if we have enough eggs! Well, hopefully you save her from being digested. Well, hopefully she's not been fully digested by the time you save her and you won't have to eat her. Because that's cannibalism. Oh. Oh. Wow. Okay. Huh. Oh. Oh. Like, just, we had zoomed in on that tree hollow. Uh. Aww. No. Hunt us a monster for dinner! Oh, he's so nice! I don't think that's gonna work. Yeah. I love Chilchuck's appearance. He looks like David Tennant from Doctor Who. uh. Oh. Living armor doesn't sound like metal. That sounds like a scorpion. Oh my god. Quit being a diva. Right. It's not gonna be like a far-fetched. Dire ducks! Oh my god. Okay, yes. Aww. Ah! A general term. Be more specific, Marcel. Oh. Oh. Like a trapdoor. Oh, shit. Ew. Theoretically, yes. Feels like a Donmai. Uh-huh. Oh, a corpse retriever, you say? That leaves the lower floors a little bit scarier. I don't know. Then we fight it. Yes. Okay. Can you now, girl? Is it gonna backfire since she's made all this big deal? Oh my god! No! Shit! Crap! Not good! Oh my god! Take only what you can eat. Oh, nice! Shit! Oh my god! Ah, no! Well, some do. It depends on the species. Oh my god, ew! Oh my god. Nice, okay. Oh! Aww. He's like the sweetest. Oh my god. Ah! Her expression! Yeah. You got intensely weird at the end there. Yes, thank you. Oh my god. Ew, I hope that those things don't, like, they're not in her skin now. Hopefully not. They look like peppers. Nice. Those seeds are huge. She's like, get your mind out of the gutter. Oh. I like that he's taking the stuff from the last meal and using it for this one. Are you making a pie? Shut up. She's like, no, that thing tried to hurt me. Okay. It's like the meme. Oh. Oh, it's a tart. Okay. We'll probably be doing the hot pot. I'm not a tart person. Oh, and especially since savory. No, just its fruit. Oh my god. It's like, okay. Mm. Oh, I'm sure. Hmm. Right. It's like a big circle of life. Uh. Oh my god! Yes! No! I love it. He's like, you got me. And she's like, no, never mind. Yeah, what we're going to do about the corpse? Yeah, what if it did backfire? We're just gonna leave him here. They'll... Oh my god! A little bit. I just left him. Uh-huh. Yeah. To eat is the privilege of the living. Oh, wow. Wow, that episode was so fast. That episode was insanely fast. Is this Bump of Chicken? How fitting that Bump of Chicken if they were doing the end of it. Okay, so that's Fallon. Okay, she does look like Leos. So they look like siblings. And Chilchuk and Senshi. Ooh, he was part of the party too, but he left. And they left too. Who is this? And yeah, she's trapped there. Uh-huh. Oh yeah, Yeah, she looks like Laos. Okay. Or Laos. Ah, this show is so funny. Laos is so adorable. He's a Labrador man. I'm here for it. Intriguing. Okay. Aw. Cute. There's like, is there an after credit scene? Is there no after credit scene? Oh no, there's not. Oh. Well. Hmm. Okay. All right. Well, this was absolutely adorable, and I love it already. I love it already. I'm probably gonna try to make the hot pot. I think I don't like tarts. I'm not a big tart fan, and I like sweet over savory. So, and also for the tart, you'd have to make your own crust or find the right crust. That seems like for beginning cooks not the best idea, even though a hot pot does sound a bit intimidating. I'm glad to know that Lios and them has they're fine. I want to see, like, how do you say Lios pronunciation? I want to get that right because Marcel and Chilchuk, Lios. Okay, so it's Lios in there. Okay, Lios. So we go back here. So okay, I did not bring Whiteboard Coon out. Y'all haven't met Whiteboard Coon. He'll probably come out later at some point. But want to go back to the beginning of this. So there was an introduction at the very beginning, of course. I want to make note about a couple of things. And that is, we start out here. I like the walking mushroom starts out. So there was a tiny village. That's where we start out at. And they tell us that the floor, the ground shook open. And there a man came from the fissure, cloaked, and said he claimed to rule the golden country which had vanished 1,000 years ago. Honestly, I've been in the past reading Berserk, and that seems like a Berserk reference because there is a plot line in Berserk that talks about like a hidden city. And so I instantly was like, oh, is this influenced by Berserk perhaps? So that very well could be, as far as we know. Right, so I thought that was interesting. But so there was a kingdom 1,000 years ago that was buried underground, kind of like the lost city of Atlantis, a little bit. And the land had prospered, he said, until a mad mage cast a spell and sunk it deep underground, which is where it is now. He's like trapping all of the subjects there. So he says, I'll give my kingdom to whoever defeats the mage. And then he disappeared in a puff of smoke. Now, how is he going to give you the kingdom if he's not there anymore? Who knows? Go find the One Piece. It's kind of what it read to me. It was like it felt very One Piece. Like, go find the One Piece, kids. Go defeat this mage. This show has a very Freerun feel, which a lot of fantasy stories, Dungeons and Dragons, you have a party going to accomplish a task. They usually have to go through a dungeon or a dungeon-like scenario, so that's like a tried and true trope that I know of. But this felt very Freerun, like the series Freerun, in the sense that you kind of start from the end, or you start from a midpoint, and then you redo your journey a little bit. So I like that. I like that we didn't just, it's not just, let's gather everybody together into a party and go do the thing. We start actually at a point in the story's already journey. A conflict has happened, and now the party has to go and resolve the conflict. And the conflict seems to be that Phelan, I think it's Phelan, that Phelan looks like a mage. So we have a party here. Looks like a female dwarf, and then we have like a warrior that kind of looks like a samurai. Then we have Marcel, who looks like the mage. Then we have Chilchuk, who has a bow and arrow. I assumed they were the thief, but... And then you have Lios, and then you have Phelan, who looks also like a mage. So having two mages is not unheard of, so that's fine. Or maybe one's a paladin. I don't know which route this fantasy story is taking. We'll see. But Lios says, with our skills, so we have Marcel and Phelan working together. I kind of got a little bit of the impression that maybe Marcel likes Phelan, but we don't have enough context yet. And she's complaining about eating all of the monsters in the dungeon, like throughout this episode. But I wondered if maybe it's part of her grieving process that she's afraid that Phelan is dead. And she's just like, well, I don't want to eat any of these monsters. And why are we doing this? And that's just her way of like coping. But it's not totally present to us, the audience, because we've not followed along them that far in the journey. We'll see what we do. But it feels like, yeah, we have the female dwarf that resigned, as well as the samurai warrior who resigned. They all try to fight this dragon. And I like that Laios, as they're, having their Leroy Jenkins style battle that's going awful, he's just like, man, I'm hungry. Which, relatable. You can't do anything on an empty stomach, You can't do anything on an empty stomach. So I like the idea that the dragon basically is defeating everyone. And he's like, there was a mistake on our map, so we wasted a day getting here. Then we lost 3 days of food in a trap that we fell into. Very much a Leroy Jenkins scenario. And he's like, after we slay this dragon, he's like, we'll need to go back for more supplies. There is an aloofness with Laios. There's like this little sweet, charming Labrador aloofness to him because he's so sweet. I like his character a lot. He's he's so kind and he's not simple at all. He's very elaborate, especially in his knowledge of monsters, which I'm reading Scumvillain Self-Saving System, and the main character of that series that I'm looking at on Mondays on the channel, the main character, he's all into monsters. Like in the monsters of their world, he's very much into it. And so Laios reminds me a little bit of him in terms of being like obsessed with the monsters. And we'll talk more about the monsters and Laios here in a minute, but he has a lot of extensive knowledge and he's very intelligent in terms of the monsters and like all of this, but there's also an absent-minded aloofness to him where he kind of like gets distracted in his own thoughts and then stuff happens, he's like, oh, what? like he just like, it's like squirrel and he's like, oh yeah, that, I forgot what we were talking about. But he's an absolute adorable man and I love him already. He might be my favorite. I like Laios so much. He's just a sweetie. But yeah, so Phelan saves him and he's like, well, what's with her? Did she get hit with a confusion spell? Like, why? Like, he wasn't paying attention. He was lost in his own thoughts. And then he turns and she, like, pushes him out of the way. And he's like, oh, what's the deal? Like, what was going on? And then that's when she gets eaten. Like, it's almost like he can't believe she would get eaten by the dragon, right? But he gets to see her. And she does look a lot like him. So him saying that she's his sister makes sense. But he's like, we came all this way just to fail. And then she sent them away. So they get sent back, and Marcel, Chilchuck, and let me get them. They all decide that they're like, have you seen Phelan? And he's like, oh, well, she got eaten by the dragon. And Marcel looks really sad about it, and he does too. He's like, I couldn't reach her. And he's like, the dragon's sleeping now. He's like, so I'm going back to get her. And she's like, we don't have any money left. All of our supplies were left back with the dragon. So Chilchuck, I love his ears. He looks like David Tennant. I don't know how else to describe it. If you don't know who David Tennant is, he's Mr. Purple in Jessica Jones's series. He's also the 10th Doctor in Doctor Who. I don't know. There's just something about his character. The ears, the red hair. He looks like David Tennant, and it's kind of mind-blowing me right now. I don't know if there's a reference there, but it's great. But he looks just like him. I can't. And he also looks like a chipmunk, so Chilchuck is really funny. But he's like, 2 of our party members decided to quit. They've got offers for another party. I also kind of like the inside joke, and it's not like a joke, but like the idea that all of these parties, it's kind of like One Piece where they're all trying to find their way through the dungeon to find this one special thing, which is the mage they have to kill. But all the parties are like switching up and recruiting new members and having members swap and do all of that. And it's basically depending on how much money and supplies that you have. Raiding dungeons costs money and needs gears and food and expenses. But here's what I'm talking about. Like Laios, he tends to like get distracted and absent-minded, but then he like gets focused on something, and he really gets focused on something. So now that I mentioned that, because he has the book, like the dungeon book that has all the monsters in it. And I don't know I don't want to say that Laios is neurodivergent. I don't want to say that yet because we've only known him for one episode. But that concept of getting super hyper-focused on one thing and kind of losing track with the other thing, I don't want to say it's neurodivergency, but could be. We need to know more about him. He could just be aloof. Could just be absent-minded. Could just be part of him. But he's like, well, we could sell all the gear that we have on us, and that would give us enough money for a little food and cheaper gear. And, maybe we could get, people to join our cause and everything. He's like, I don't know what we should do. He's like trying to figure it out. And then he's like, by the time we figure this all out, he's like, my sister will be digested. And he's like, well, if she doesn't get chewed up, can she just get pooped out? like just asking the real questions. There was like a little bit of, not vulgarity, but a little bit of swear words in this. And I was like, oh, okay. But then I look on here and it's like, I think it was like rated MA. And I was like, this series is rated MA? Okay. Is it just the swearing, or... I'm curious. I'm going to be curious as we go through this, like what it is about it. I like the animation style. I also like everyone's costuming and their outfits. It feels very like when I think of a fantasy story and the characters. It's hard to describe, but I remember my aunt used to get like a Nintendo Power magazine back in the 90s when they would have those Nintendo Power magazines. And it reminds me very much of like early Final Fantasy, like 1, 2, 3, or like, just some of the earlier concepts of like kind of fantasy world building games for Nintendo. The early Final Fantasies like 1, 2, and 3 are the ones that I think of, but their outfit designs kind of remind me of that. Not like super like lots of belts and things and like Final Fantasy 7 on, but like one of the earlier like fantasy models. So like first we have to find something to eat, and Marcel is like, you would expect, she's like, well, we could have like, dumplings, do all this. But Laios is like, we are going to take advantage of this situation we are in to do 2 things. One is to save money that we don't have by eating the monsters in the dungeon. And 2, he's like, I've kind of always wanted to eat the monsters in the dungeon, so I kind of want to do it. I'm like, Laios kind of has a secret kink where he wants to get really into the monsters in the dungeon. He's like, can we do this? Can we go with this? I've always wanted to like live off the land in the dungeon. She's like, oh, that sounds really gross. I like that her idea is like all of these dumplings and things like that. And Chilchuck's was like shrimp tempura, crawfish tempura, and like kebabs. It was very like stereotypical Japanese cuisine. He's like, we're going back in the dungeon. And at first he says he's going to do it alone. He's like, I'll just sell things that I have to. I can just go to the dungeon. I'll avoid the monsters. I'll get down to the floor faster, and I'll save my sister. And Marcel and Chilchuck are like, that's a terrible idea. You won't be successful. We are going to go with you because we have an investment in this too. And they always seem like they're friends with Phelan as well. So she's like, I'm not going to slow you down. Also, she got really blushy. Marcel got really blushy when talking about going to rescue Phelan. So that lends me to believe that maybe she likes her. And it's like, okay, we'll see where that goes. And Chilchuck's like, I can be of help too. And I like he has a little key. He's like, you never know when you're going to need a trap disarmed. So he's like a little thief, like a locksmith. And he's like, oh, well, thanks, guys. Like, he's so sweet. He's like, you guys are the best. But are you sure you want to come? You could die. I love the humor in this series is very like dark comedy, dark humor, and I'm all for that. I'm like, yes, please. I'm here for it. So he's like, we're gonna get our food from the dungeon. He's like, the monster is full of dungeons. I like that Laios approaches it from like an ecological standpoint. He's like, look, think of it this way. There's a food pyramid. There is a circle of life situation. There is a way that we kind of like come full circle with this. He's like, look, this seems like the best way to do it. He's like, come on, guys, this will be fun. And it does make sense. Although there's a damn horse down there, apparently. There's like horses. What was I? I'm trying to think of the one plant. It looks like the evolved form of Bellsprout from Pokemon. And what am I thinking of? It's like Bellsprout. It's based off of an actual plant in the Amazon that like is that little bell shaped. It's not Vileplume. What's Bellsprout's line? I'm going to look that up real quick. It reminded me of the Bellsprout evolution. Weepin' Bell, Victory Bell. Victory Bell is what it reminded me of. I was like, what is that Pokemon? But Victory Bell is what it was reminding me of, which is based off a plant too in its design. So cobras, wolves. I don't know if I want to be eating wolves, but the dragon makes sense, I guess. It'd be like Gator Tail. So he's like, every meal, he's like, all of our adventures up till now. He's like, don't you remember seeing some tasty monsters? And I like that we look at Chilchuk. Chilchuk is like, oh yeah, the rabbit and the birds and the fish, but also a walking tree int. But then you cut to Marcel, who was just like, no, there were like corpses and centipedes and gargoyles, things that don't look appetizing. So Marcel already had like a really bad impression of what the monsters they would eat would be. So this was kind of going to be an uphill battle from her to begin with. And she's like, well, I don't know. And she's like, well, there's just been criminals who have been banished down here. Like, people die from food poisoning and blow chunks out of both ends. And then we see Senshi walk by, right? He was in the shadows. We didn't see him. He's like, well, you did say you'd do anything to save poor Phelan. And she's like, well, I didn't say I'd eat monsters. And that's when Senshi sees them talking about it. He's like, well, we don't have money for food, so what else can we do? I like that the reason Senshi joins them is because he's found someone else that shares his affinity for monsters, which is fun. I like that. I think that's really super cute. But it's like, okay, cool. And so then, yeah, Chilchuk very much seems like he's the mediator in all of this. Like, Marcel and Laios seem like they're the ones right now that argue back and forth the most. And I can imagine when Laios' sister was there, what kind of dynamic she would have, especially if Marcel's involved. Chilchuk seems like the one that he's just there for the ride, and he's like the chill one, the mediator of them all. We'll see how that dynamic goes later. But then they see the walking mushroom. So she's like, these newbies in this dungeon don't know what to do. So I am very curious because Chilchuk brings up a good point. He's like, how long has this dungeon been here? Well, they established that like the country was from 1,000 years ago. So this has been here quite a while. They don't tell us how long since that, ruler showed up to give them that One Piece prophetic bit to get them to go in the dungeon. We don't know how long ago that was. So I think that is important to note that we don't have that context yet of how long people have been going into the dungeon. Also, they make a note of saying the monsters are kind of protecting something at the bottom of the dungeon where the mage supposedly is. Also, it kind of feels like the opposite of, there was a dystopian book series I read called Wool. And in that, they talk about like these underground silos. It's kind of like a post-apocalyptic, post-nuclear future where they live in these silos. And the deeper you go in the silo, the more like civilized it is. But the closer you get to the top, it's kind of like Fallout a little bit. The less civilized it gets. This feels like the mirror of that, where on top, by the surface, is where most of the people are. So the top portion is all familiar. Like, they have cleaning crews come in to take the corpses out, which is terrifying. And everybody seems like Chilchuk says it so casually, like they're so used to people dying. He's like, yeah, we got the corpse retrievers. They come and get the corpses out of the way. And you're like, okay, well, that establishes that people die here regularly. So they're used to that, which could help explain why Laios and Marcel and them aren't like sobbing at Phelan being eaten by a dragon. They're like, well, she's got some time before she digests. Guess we better go get her. It's like, okay, so they're used to that world and how it normally is. But they did make a point of saying farther down you go, the less people are as knowledgeable about what's down there. It's kind of like you're going into the ocean and you don't know what's at the bottom of the ocean, if it's protecting something or what it is. So there's a good chance that they're going to meet up with corpses and ghosts and goblins and whatever else at the bottom of this, which is interesting to know, to say the least. But yeah, so I also like that they're like, this section is bustling with merchants and adventurers. And you have like a lot of stereotypical like mage costumes and stuff. But then they make a point of saying that it used to be the catacombs where the villagers' ancestors were laid to rest. And 6 years ago, it was connected to the dungeon proper and is now like an entry point. So it's just kind of like, they just casually are like, yeah, this used to be where a bunch of dead people were buried. But now it's like a trade center. And you're like, oh, okay. So again, it's setting up a lot of the tone with the series and how to like view the world building, which is interesting to me. But yeah, so they catch the scorpion. They get ready to make a hot pot. And at that point, they're getting water. I like they just do it in front of everybody and everybody's just staring. And again, to kind of go with the whole neurodivergency angle with it, Laios is just like, well, the water source is there, so why would we not make something right here? Like, there is kind of a aversion or like not referencing social convention that Laios just seems to like bypass. And I think in some realms that might be seen as like a form of neurodivergency, but I don't know. So again, we don't know a lot about him. The thing I like is that Marcel and Chilchuk kind of just accept it. And they're like, okay, sure, let's go with it. Like, I like that they don't obviously look down on Laios or treat him any differently. Also because Laios is like the warrior that's helping them. So they kind of need him in the party. But they seem really like kind to him. I like the kindness and camaraderie that they all have, even though they argue and fuss like siblings. I do like that camaraderie. Although Marcel's expressions throughout this were hilarious. I loved it. Where she was just like, I hate this. I like how, unlike Frieren, Marcel is very expressive. And she's very emotional and will let you know, right? So they start making this hot pot, and it is not very successful. And that's where Senshi shows up and he's like, let me help you. Let me help you figure out how to do this. And he's like, we need more than just scorpions and mushrooms. And I like that right off the bat, this series kind of establishes the idea of using nature, and it's a privilege to be able to eat. You can't look at it as, oh, well, this was made from this and how gross. It's like, no, you're alive. You have the privilege of eating. You should be able to do that to the fullest. Because at first she's like, oh, we can't put in these little cabbages and stuff. They're like they're created from the fertilizer of corpses. And since she's like, they're not the corpses themselves. They're just plants. It's a totally different thing. And I think that's a good point to bring up, because I know I'm from the country, and so I'm from a farm, and so my parents have gardens, and technically the best fertilizer on a garden is basically animal feces. That's the best fertilizer you can get. And so, you grow a lot of things with that, and you clean it, obviously, but the soil and stuff is tended to with natural fertilizers. And when you think about it, yeah, it's kind of gross, but it lends you something that's healthy and that you can eat and clean, right? So I think Senshi brings up that good point too, in that if you prepare it properly, it will be fine. So, and then the slime thing. The one thing with the slime was that Marcel's like, I'm going to die now. And I'm like, you're surrounded by people, girl. They're going to save you. You're going to be fine. Unless she doesn't trust Chilchuk and Laios to save her. But I love that Senshi just joins them because he wants to travel with people who share the same passion that he does. I love that him and Laios have found a camaraderie with one another. It's great. So then, yeah, they talk about citrus juice and hot water and drying it in the sun. You can use it. And then he's made his own concoctions to help him like cook things. It's super cute. I love it. And he's been there for 10 years. So at least the dungeon's been around for at least 10 years. Or at least it's been open for that long. Yeah, we're definitely going to have to make a hot pot and talk about it there, but interesting. It's super good. Like, of course, anime food looks amazing no matter what. And I do like that Marcel, she, begrudgingly eats the dungeon food, but then she's totally okay with it. She's like, fine, I'll eat it. Whatever. Which was great. I thought that was really wonderful. So he's like, fantastic. And so they go on their way. And so he's like, and Senshi is all about going with them to get to the dragon, because if they go to the dragon, he's like, that you can make hamburgers, you can make, all these different creations. We can have food for weeks. Like, he's just excited at the prospect of making more food. He's like a chef ready to go to work. So then I like the way that they establish the map of the castle and everything. So as far as we know, they talk about the village, like at the bottom, it seems like underground, there's like different levels, but it seems like at the very, very bottom, supposedly it's like snowy and dark, but there's still foliage, trees and stuff down there. And so then they talk about there being like a water level and then all of this. And then right now they're at the upper level where it's just got enough sunlight and stuff to grow all these trees. It's very fantastical and not necessarily realistic, but it's a fantasy, so we can let it go. So Chilchuk's like, these trees are so tall. I always wondered how they didn't poke through to the surface. And Laios is like, well, maybe the curse in this place won't let them. And we don't get another explanation to that. So they're asking questions that maybe the show will reveal later on. Who knows? But Marcel, of course, falls. And then I love that Laios is like, here, I'll help you. He's like the sweetest. Laios is like a little Labrador, and I love him. He's so kind. And he's like, remember that time I tried to make pork soup and I burnt it? So they're just glad Senshi's there. Otherwise, they would be not getting the best food possible. So all of the different plants and stuff, like the fruits and trees and all that, what does he go on about? He talks about different things they can eat. And Chilchuk's like, well, what kind of monsters are around here that we can eat? And he's like, well, let me get out my guidebook and look. He's like, there's big bats and giant rats. And she's like, I'm not eating rats and bats. And he's like, well, there's forest goblins. And she's like, I'm not eating demi-humans either. Which, girl, I understand the demi-human thing because that's a little too close to cannibalism. Maybe not. And he's like, well, there's also living armor. Now, the living armor, she'd said about metal, I don't think that's what it is. I think living armor is probably like a scorpion or something with an exoskeleton that can protect it. But she just took it the wrong way. And she's like, well, isn't there anything normal like birds or fruit? And I like that Chilchuk's like, oh my God, you said you were fine with anything and then you complained. He's not into the drama at all. He's like, and then you hate whatever we suggest. You're that type. And she's like, well, what? I just don't want to eat gross things. And poor Laios is like, but the monsters, you don't want to eat the monsters? Like, they're all packed with nutrients. I have a whole book of them. I've used Post-its to mark the best pages. Like, I love their expressions. And so then, aren't there normal animals here? And he's like, well, yeah, but we'd have to set traps and wait for them. He's like, a duck isn't going to walk by with a green onion. And I immediately thought of the Pokemon Farfetch'd. This feels like they're eating Pokemon, really. She's like, that's true. And he's like, but this is a dungeon, so there could be dire ducks, which, dire wolves in Game of Thrones are just giant wolves. So giant ducks with man-eating green onions. Why not? And she's like, forget I said anything. And she's like, I don't share your optimism for it. And he's like, oh, Laios gets so sad. He's like, you don't share my optimism for monsters? Like, what a goof. And he's like, well, there's plenty of nuts and fruit around, but the things we get those nuts and fruit from are a little bit sketchy. He's like, yes. So then we see like the giant like plants and flowers, they look like vile plumes. Yes, of course. A man-eating fruit plant. I should have known. I do like the animation style. It's really cool. I like it. He's like, well, man-eating is a general term for it. It eats all sorts of things. And so they talk about the different flowers and what they do, which are pretty creative, honestly, and probably based off of real-life plants. He's like, these grow in the soil and they're fertilized by the animal corpses and other feces. A corpse retriever would come in and got the body, so we'll be fine. But of course, then that one spits out the body and she's like, whatever. Okay, one thing I am glad about is this vine plant that looks like something from the Upside Down in Stranger Things grabs her. And he's like, no, you can't just cast a spell destroying all the plants. Since she's like, there's an ironclad rule here. You only take what you can eat. Which is, I like that. He's like, we have to make this sustainable. So you only eat what you can. You leave the rest for everybody else. And she's like, well, that's easy for you to say. You're not hanging upside down. Stop lecturing me and help. So anyway, unfortunately, it did look like it could have laid its seeds in her. Hopefully it did not, because parasites and stuff like that, I am terrified of that. So the concept of it laying its seeds in her is so gross. And then when Laios, he's like, that plant is parasitic and it, settles its seeds in you, but I'll help. He's like, and so he ends up cutting her loose, which is really sweet. And he's like, are you okay? And he's like, how was it? The species, they leave its seeds under your skin, So it's called a shadow tail. And he's like, unlike the type that squeezes you till your bones break, it's like this type needs to keep whatever it traps within its vines alive. And then it squeezes its prey just enough so that it can't escape, but it's relatively comfortable in its clutches. He's like, so it felt kind of cozy, didn't it? And then he looks up at her and she's like, no, her face. She's like, I don't share the same kinks that you have, sir. So Laios may have a monster kink. He wants to eat them, but he also would be totally fine if they kind of crushed him just a little bit. So might have a wee bit of a kink. And Marcel's like, I do not share in your kinks, sir. Which is great. So yeah, they end up going in this tree hollow, which they showed the tree hollow earlier on. It was in passing, and it was a moment they focused in on it, and it felt kind of weird. Like I was like, is something going to come out of the hollow and attack them? But no, the tree hollows are actually huge, and they can actually prepare the tart and all of that within it, which is really neat. And I like I said in the reaction, I really like that Senshi uses some of the material that he had from the previous hot pot dish and saved it and used it in the tart. So Senshi is very much a waste not, want not person, which I appreciate to a great extent. So yeah. Anyway, so then they have the tart. Marcel admits that it's pretty good, and they talk about basically there being just, I like that Laios is like, see, he's like, oh, well, it's a carnivorous plant. He's like, being delicious is part of the plant strategy. And I love that he's just so surprised. He's like, she's like, what are you looking at? And he's like, are you starting to like are you liking monsters as much as I do? And she's like, let's not get crazy. I like that they talk briefly about, do we resurrect him with magic? And Laios is like, that might backfire. And I'm like, so instead they string him up. And the best part is when they string him up, I like the idea that they all three like look at the body strung up and they're like, that might send the wrong message. But then they just keep him up there anyway. It's great. And so then all four of them are asleep. I love Marcel having a poor nightmare, probably because she's like, doesn't want to think about parasitic food and plants. And Laios is like, dungeon food, eat or be eaten. There is no hierarchy to it. Just the reality that to eat is the privilege of the living. So I don't know who these other two individuals in there are. I don't think they're Marcel and Chilchuk unless that's how he views them in his brain, or if they're other people as well. But he's like, oh, dungeon food. Delicious in dungeon. Roll credits. Interesting. And then we have our ED, which I'm not going to look too much into the ED because it feels like there's characters in there we haven't explored yet. So, I do really love Laios, though. He's such a sweet bean. He's the cutest, and he's my favorite so far. So they have a quest to find Phelan. They have a quest. They're ready to go. And now they have to go try to track down the dragon, start back from square one, work their way back down to where the dragon was, and go from there. Fun times. But we're going to end out this video doing part one of the cooking of the things. And we're going to come back probably, I don't know if we'll finish. I don't know if you all, as I'm recording this, I haven't recorded the part you're about to watch with the cooking portion. So I don't know if it's going to be making the whole thing this episode or if it will extend on to episode 2. You'll just have to see and watch and find out. But I hope you enjoyed this other part of this video, and I am excited to hear your comments down below. But I'll talk to you all in the latter part of this video as well, but I hope you enjoy, and I am so excited for episode 2. Now, let's go cook something.
Hey everybody, so this is starting our cooking journey, and I wanted to, before we started cooking, go over like all the ingredients that I used for this, because I did have to make a couple substitutions from the original recipe, which I will talk about when we start the actual video. But before I start making the broth, which is going to happen here shortly, I want to kind of go over basically the ingredients and parts that I got for that. So thank you, Patreon, for helping me to get this fly-by-jing hot pot. There were a lot on the market that had like 2 different containers where you could split the broth, but I just wanted one because that's kind of what the recipe calls for, is just one single broth. So I got this fly-by-jing. Patreon helped to pay for it. It looks really easy to use, and it's pretty standard, and I just thought it seemed very high quality, had a lot of good reviews. But it came in this box here, just in case if you're curious. Has like a nice little instruction manual, which is nice to have. That's what we're going to be using to make our broth, and I'll talk about that here shortly. Also, it came with these really nice like tongs that you can get to help you scoop out all of your ingredients, and some silver chopsticks, which is really important. So the stuff that we're going to be using for the broth is going to be this kombu, which I had to order online because rural grocery stores here in the US don't have them apparently. So this is what we're going to be using for the broth, along with later on some dried shiitake mushrooms, which I'll talk about here in a little bit. And then they said you could use anchovy tablets. I decided to go with seafood because I don't really care for anchovies too much, and this seemed like a comparable substitute to that. Also, the instructions will tell you to add miso and soy sauce. The ingredients don't include them. Luckily, I had some low sodium soy sauce because I'm trying not to make it too salty. The only miso that was in the grocery store was this white miso that we're gonna use. I figured the white miso would work because usually when I think of beef or pork, I think of red sauce, but when I think of like chicken or seafood, I think of white. So I figured the white would work. We'll talk about it again when we go back to making the broth and everything. We also have, instead of mountain yams, because hashtag rural struggles, these are sweet potatoes. We're going to be using sweet potatoes instead of mountain yams, but it said mountain yams or potatoes would work. We also have some of these, the magic noodles, the konjaku, which I had to order online, but it's exactly what the recipe calls for, so we're going to be using that. As far as the mushrooms go, rural grocery stores do not have shimeji or oyster mushrooms. They just don't. I went to 3 different ones. None of them had them. What they did have were portobello. So we're going to use portobellas instead of the oyster mushrooms. It's not going to taste the same as what the recipe calls for, but I like portobellas. I think they're huge, kind of like the oyster mushrooms. So these are going to have to work. And then for the feet of the walking mushrooms, we're going to have these baby bella mushrooms, and we're going to cook them as well. And then this was the only thing of Napa cabbage in the entire grocery store. They're just like, who's going to use Napa cabbage? So we've got that to be our grave lettuce. And then as far as the scorpion tails go, the recipe made them a little bit differently, but I found these on sale, these lobster tails that I've been thawing out. So we're going to use lobster tails for the scorpion tails. Now, obviously this is a little bit of a bougie choice, but they were on sale, so that's what we're gonna go with. But the actual recipe, we'll talk about what they wanted there, but I just wanted to give you guys a little glimpse at all of the ingredients that you will need to create your hot pot if you're gonna do it for our Dungeon Meshi cooking experience. So I'm gonna go start making the broth, and then I'll come back when we're actually ready to start cooking. Okay, so the first thing that I did was to start the prep on the broth. So you basically put in 8 cups of water, which is 2 of these, straight into the hot pot. And then you take 2 strips of the kombu, of the seaweed that they give you. I just took a pair of household scissors that I cleaned off, and then you just basically cut the 2 strips in half, and in each of them you cut small slits around them as well. Now, the recipe itself calls for you to basically leave it sitting and soaking up anywhere between 20 minutes and 3 hours. So right now it's about 10 o'clock in the morning. So I'm gonna let this soak for about 2 hours. It says the longer that you leave it in to soak just in the cool water, the more flavorful the broth will be. You can do 20 minutes if you just want a little bit of flavor, but I'm gonna try to like be in that little sweet spot. So I'm gonna aim for about an hour and a half to 2 hours to start soaking it before we do anything else. The other thing it said was about 20 minutes before you start the actual process of cooking. If you want to use dried shiitake mushrooms, you should take 4 of them and then soak them in water for about 20 minutes. So before we come back to this video, I'll have gone about 20 minutes ahead of time and soaked a couple of these mushrooms to get them ready to put into the broth when it's about time to start cooking. Okay, so my brother is here to help me make hot pot, aka Dungeon Meshi style. Say hello, Broseph.
Yo.
So I went ahead earlier, like I said, and showed you all the equipment and all the setup and all the stuff. I've been doing a little bit of prep work to get ready. So we've started the heat to start with our broth. You can see that the kombu is really expanded. It's really started to kind of fill out. So we're gonna let this get to a simmer, and then it says it's gonna simmer for 10 minutes. So we're gonna do that. In the meantime, I took 4 of the dried shiitake mushrooms. They've been soaking in this water for about 20 minutes. And here in a second, it wants me to cut a diagonal slit over the top of them, I guess, to start letting that flavor out. So what I've also done is I've still got to get ready the grave lettuce, as well as we're probably just gonna leave, since we didn't have oyster mushrooms, we're probably gonna leave just the shiitake as they are because the recipe called for you to cut the oysters into pieces like this. So I'm assuming that that's what we'll do. We can break it up if we need to. I rinsed out the konnyaku noodles. So those are all rinsed out and they're ready to go. I went ahead and took the roots out of the button mushrooms that are gonna be the feet of the walking mushrooms. And then, so directions are important, as you know, and my brother has the best look on his face. They told us to quarter the yams, and by quarter, I took that to mean like throw them in a hurricane. So I did quarter one of the mountain yams. The other one met the unfortunate overcutting of a machete. So we're just gonna have lots of bite-sized pieces. But I like bite-sized pieces of my mountain yam anyway. Who wants to eat like a whole mountain yam? You don't, right, Broseph?
Nah.
So we still have to work on these. And then we have these lovely lobster tails thawing out. They're so gross! But we'll have to get ready. But it'll be fine. It'll be great. So yeah, so we're gonna let this simmer just a little bit more. The recipe that I got for all of this, because why would we want to reinvent the wheel? Why would we want to start from scratch? So I want to give a shout out to isakaikitchen.com. This lovely individual created this recipe and actually has a step-by-step instructions on how to do this as well. So they seem much more savvy with cooking, so you might want to go check out their video as well. I'll include a link to it down below, but this recipe is taken from them. The only thing I've changed is instead of the bougie lobster tails that you might not be able to get on sale like I did, or maybe you don't like lobster. The other alternative is what they did was they took shrimp and they ground up shrimp, put white wine or white sake, and then what they did was also add a little bit of salt, a little bit of cornstarch. They mashed it all up into the paste that would be the scorpion, and then they took red bell peppers and carved them out to make the shell of the scorpion and put them in the hot pot. So if you don't like lobster, or if you don't want to go through all that trouble, then you could do that as well. I just already had the lobster before I found the recipe, so that's kind of where we left it. So we're gonna let this simmer for a little bit and simmer for 10 minutes, and then we'll come back and go to the next step and answer some questions. Okay, so we got about 4 minutes left until that has simmered for about 10 minutes. So while we're doing that, we're gonna go ahead and take care of our Napa cabbage. So looking at our directions, they say to take probably about 4 or 5. I did 6 because I wanted a little extra cabbage. And we're going to basically cut it into 4 parts. Now, when they say 4 parts, do you think it means like long ways? I'm assuming.
That makes sense to me.
Okay, so what we're gonna do is cut it into 4 parts. This could be totally wrong. You don't have to zoom in on the cabbage. Okay, so we're just gonna, they said you could put the stems in. That would be later. The stems would be in, and then you kind of like roll it in parts to look like the grave lettuce. The directions clearly state, it says roll 1 portion of leafy parts into each other until you get something resembling the lettuce. Oh, I guess that you... My brother can tell you how amazing of a cook I am.
She is a good cook.
We'll just roll this sucker in there and call it good. It's all going in the same place. There's no wrong way to do this.
Gordon Ramsay, I apologize.
All right, so while we're waiting here and see how much time we got left, we got about a couple minutes. I want to go ahead and answer some questions from over on Patreon for episode 1. So Francesca White asks, who is your favorite character after episode 1 so far and why? Which I would say is Laios. Laios is my favorite so far. He is like a Labrador human, and so he's super nice, but he's also got a heart of gold. And so far we don't know a lot about the characters, but I find him just being a lot of fun. And I definitely think he's gonna be somebody that's interesting because he doesn't seem fazed by anything. And if you're going in this dungeon, there's probably gonna be a lot of shenanigans go down. So it'll be curious to see if he's gonna be like the everyman that's kind of like the blank slate that bounces off everybody else's chaos. That's gonna be interesting to see. Anime Annie says, what meal would be your go-to if you were as hungry as our characters are at the beginning of episode 1? You're gonna have to chime in on that too, bro. But I would say if I'm really hungry and I want something very quick and satisfying, pizza is probably the best thing to go to. I love sushi the most, but I don't fill up on sushi. So if I was like dying of hunger, I would say probably pizza. I have another answer to that question, but it ties into someone else's Patreon question. What would be your go-to, bro, if you had to do that?
Cheeseburger.
Oh, cheeseburger would make sense. All right, we got about a minute left. Damage3245 says, what are your favorite meals? My favorite meal, this is something that is easy to cook. It's the easiest thing in the world. My mother makes it. We call it cracked chicken, but it's basically broiled chicken breast, and you put it into a pan like a casserole alongside chopped up broccoli and bread stuffing. So it could either be just regular stuffing, or she gets Hawaiian bread stuffing, which is a little bit sweeter because I have a sweet tooth, and then cream of celery or cream of mushroom, and you just mix it all together. You bake it, you pop it out. It is the best thing. I could eat a whole pan of it, and it's the easiest thing in the world to make. What would be yours, brother?
The cracked chicken. That's really good.
It is really good. It's so easy to make. It's just so easy. I could eat a whole pan of it. Their other question was, what is a meal you've tried once and vowed to never try again? We're going to take care of the kombu here in a second before I answer that question, because that one has a story to it. But the recipe says that once you've let this simmer for 10 minutes, the thing to do is to take the kombu out, because if you leave it in for more than 10 minutes, it can make your hot pot have a bitter taste to it. So we're gonna carefully take our chopsticks, our silver chopsticks, get this trash can over here, and we are gonna take this sucker out if I can get my hands on it. Normally, if you live near a composter, you could probably compost this, but...
Do you need a pair of tongs?
Maybe, yeah. Why are we working harder? We're gonna take the kombu out. All right, kombu is acquired. So our next step is, for the kombu as it's in here, our next step is to add, now here's the thing, in the ingredients list, they don't tell you that there was soy sauce and miso, but then when you get to the instructions, they want you to have it. So I have my handy dandy R2D2 measuring cup, which has tablespoons here. This one here is about 1/3 of a tablespoon, but if you use a giant spoon, that's probably gonna be about the same. So they said you could actually add in, I'm gonna bring the instructions over here now, that you could go ahead and add anchovy tablets if you want more flavor, along with the shiitake mushrooms. We're gonna add in the shiitake mushrooms first. What they wanted was, as I put this over here, you to take like a little diagonal slit on either side of the top part of the cap. Guess to probably let out some of that flavor as well, and pop those in. Whoop. These were dried shiitake mushrooms, but now they're actually, they've rehydrated and they're really squishy. So we're gonna do a little diagonal slit there. That might help like the juices to soak into it as well. I like shiitake mushrooms, so. All right, and we're gonna set that out. Then the next thing we're gonna do is to take our soy sauce, and here, we're gonna add the soy sauce in there, into that. And then, so as far as the miso goes, here's the problem I have with miso. It has a lot of sodium in it, a lot. I wanted to make my own broth, mainly because most of the pre-made broths that you can find, not that they're bad, but they have a lot of sodium. And I don't really like things that are too salty, and I don't want to be like just drowned in salt. So the recipe calls for 5 tablespoons of this, but that seems like a lot, and it's a lot of sodium for just one. So since it said the seafood tablets are optional and they have way less sodium, we're gonna do 2 of these tablets, pop them in, and we're just gonna do 1 tablespoon of miso. If it seems bland, we might add more. But we're American palates, so bland is not a problem. So we're just gonna do that and go in and stuff in. So the other question was, as I stir this around, because I think that's what we do next, somebody was asking, it was Damage3245, what meal I've tried that I would never try again. When a bunch of us went to New York over the summer with the school that I work at, my best friend was like, I really want to try Cantonese Chinese food. And for reference, the Vietnamese and Chinese food that's in our area, we came to find out later is more Szechuan style. I really like Szechuan style a lot. But we tried to find an authentic Cantonese restaurant, and so we went in, had like duck and rice and eggs, and my palate, the rice and everything tastes like it had been soaked in dishwater. And it was just really, really lavendery and florally. And for the rice and everything, it just was not my style at all. And the duck meat still had the bones in it. You had to pick them out. It just was not for me, so I don't think I would ever try that meal again. We went and got a hamburger afterwards, which is the most American thing you can think of. But in hindsight, I'm like, Szechuan style is more my favorite, but Cantonese, not personally for me. And then Without a Net has asked, what type of TTRPG or tabletop role-playing games experience do you have? Or I guess, how did you hear of Gen Con? So I told someone on the Discord on Patreon, went to Gen Con this year, and I told them that my brother and I had gone just for fun a few years. And so we mainly went to Gen Con because we like to go to conventions that are relatively close. I say close, they're hours and hours away, but they're within driving distance. So we heard of Gen Con that way. And I had actually gone to a concert in Indianapolis and saw it, and there were people in cosplay, and I was like, what is this? And that's kind of was my introduction to it. But we both just like going and hanging out, seeing the cosplay, going and seeing all the different things. As far as role-playing game experience, my brother's more the gamer than I am. We grew up playing tabletop games. I mean, we played the Pokemon game, we played all the stereotypical ones, but I don't have as much experience with that. My brother could probably attest as to his experience as well. It's just, yeah. But we both like Gen Con just for the experience, and there's so many people there that there's all the food, there's all the different games. My brother's done an Overwatch tournament there before. Did you do League of Legends, or was it just Overwatch?
It was Overwatch. I wanted to do it the next year, but I didn't apply in time.
Yeah. And so they've done different tournaments there for that, and they had like miniatures where you could paint them, and there was a contest, so I did like the miniature painting contest, just things like that. Like, I love going to conventions because it's just, there's so much artistry and everybody's cosplay ability, and it's just so much fun to see a community of people gathered together kind of geeking out about the same thing. And if you grew up in the United States in the late 90s, early 2000s, you might know about Homestar Runner, which was like the little Flash animations that were really popular then. I got to meet the creator of that series, and it was really cool. I got yelled at by Strong Bad for interrupting a board game, so bucket list unlocked. But we're gonna let this heat up a little bit more before we put the lobster and the other stuff in, and then we'll come back for episode 2 and let y'all know how it ends up. So tune in and we'll see you then. I'll see y'all for episode 2. We'll have more questions to answer then. See you then!